So after posting the video of Darkseid with the lit eyes, I had a lot of requests for a how-to video, and this is it. It's a very simple one because it's really simple to do this modification. So make yourself comfortable, get yourself a small hand drill if you've got one or if you can purchase one, and choose the smallest bit or the one that's adequate to what you want to drill. In this case, it's going to be the eyes. It's very simple to drill out the eyes because the head sculpt is soft plastic, and this is what you'll have. But we want to know how to get to the point of putting in the eyes. Well, I've already drilled out the eyes. Now we're going to attach the LEDs. Now I've switched them on because I want to see where they show up on the perforated area, and there it is. It is a white light. Now I've already enlarged the eye holes a little bit more because I wanted them to be more prominent. So I've placed an LED already on one side and I've held it down with UV resin. So I'm now attaching the second eye, and I want to position it where it's going to be showing the diode directly in the opening. Now I've already unglued this because I've had it glued before, so I'm going to take away some of the excess resin because I want it to fit properly. And just be careful when you're using these tiny LEDs because they are delicate and they are very small. So once you've got it trimmed down to what you need, obviously if you're using a new one, it's going to be clean. And the tricky part is to hold it down while you're gluing it. So the best thing to do is to attach just a little bit of the UV resin into the opening and then attach the light. Or you can put in some of the UV resin on the actual diode and then hold it in place while you're using the UV light to cure it. So it takes a bit of practice. It's not going to happen on the first try. So just make sure that you have it positioned correctly. Now, as you can see on the inside, that peg, well, you can remove it. I just didn't remove it for the purpose of I've already done it. But it makes it easier, yes, if you do remove that center peg on the head. And remember, it is a soft plastic. And because it is such a thin layer of plastic, you're not able to actually insert the diode through the eye and cut away all of that excess light. So in the end, you will have to come back after it's dry and cap off that excess light so that it doesn't show up on the chest or on the shoulders. So as you can see, I'm continuously checking to make sure that my positioning is correct. I do have it hooked up to my USB to make sure that I can click it on and make sure I see the light coming through the opening. Now, if you're going to make the opening wider after you do the drilling, you definitely want to use a new blade on your X-Acto knife. That way you have the sharpest possible and it's easier to cut that soft plastic. But because it is easier, you're going to have to be more careful. You don't want to overcut, because if you overcut, then that's it. You've just ruined that one side of the face. You'll have to get the other to match, and that's just as difficult. So having very little carvings is better than carving out large chunks of plastic. And you'll be able to see that as you slowly match each side. Now once you attach the glue on the inside or the UV resin, then come around to the front and cure the front because some of it will seep into the front. Now keep in mind that when using the UV resin, the thicker the coat is, the longer it will take to cure. The thinner, the quicker it will cure. So you want to use thin layers and build up the layers as you need them to hold the pieces in place. Now as you can see, I do have an excess of wire, and that can be a problem if we just set it onto the peg or the peg socket. You could have wires coming out the ends of the bottom of the skull. We don't want to have that. So we want to attach some of the slack on the inside, and again, we're going to use UV resin to attach it as best as possible. So it is not tricky, but it is time consuming because you want to bend that wire without breaking the wire. and you want to have just enough slack so that when you do move the head, you have enough to make those movements. So just by grabbing some of the UV on the edge of the knife or an applicator and just applying it just to the area where you're going to sit down that wire, and then hit it with the UV, and then it will hold. So you may have to repeat it once or twice until you get it correct. It's not going to be an issue if you repeat it and you've got excess UV in there, because you're not going to see it. So just take your time to do each side as close as possible so that you don't have slack that is loose inside the skull. So this is actually the trickiest part, is getting these wires to stay and then putting the wires in behind those eye sockets. It should take you maybe 30, maybe 40 minutes to do this entire process right here. But this is actually the most difficult part. The easiest part is coming up after this. So let me show you what we can do to change the eye color of those white diodes. You can go to Amazon or your local hobby store and pick up the transparent dye, and it comes in a pack of 3, or you can get it in singles as well. This is obviously an orange, which I've mixed in red and yellow to create the orange, and you can mix it in the consistency that you need, or I should say the transparency, maybe more yellow or maybe more red. It's all up to you. But you want to apply it inside the eye socket that needs to be filled. And you can use, like I'm doing here, the knife, or you can use a toothpick or an other small applicator. Now, you want to make sure that you have enough of that resin in there so that it will harden once you hit it with the UV. So that's going to be important. So you'll want to create layers. Build one layer, use the UV and harden it, and then the other. Again, for video purposes, I've already done some of this, so we don't have to spend a whole lot of time watching this video. We just want the key highlights as to how it's done. Now, if you see excess that goes off into the edges, you don't have to worry about that either. If you've got some gray paint or some dark gray paint, you just go back in after it's dry, obviously, and paint back in those shadows, because it'll be opaque paint. It will cover the translucent areas. So if you overshaped one of the eyes, you can actually bring it back down to size by using the paint on the exterior. Obviously, you want to cut out the correct size hole and not have to do that. But in the case that you do happen to overcut it, or it spreads over to the eye socket on the exterior, you can paint back in the shape that you need. And obviously, always test out your lights, make sure everything is working before you continue to the next step. Make sure the UV resin is fully dry before you continue with anything else, because if it is soft, you are going to pull those wires out. If it is soft, you are going to ruin the work that you've already done, and you'll have to start over. And that really is not fun. In this case, I am starting over because I didn't like the small pinhole that was left by that drill bit. It does look like the character from the movie with the small hole in the eye, but it just really didn't hit me with enough impact to do so. Plus, I didn't like the consistent light in the eyes that I had before. I wanted this flashing or this flickering light in the eyes that you just now see. It adds more life to it. So let's get to how the wires are installed inside the neck. Before we get to the wires inside the neck, I do want to remind you that you will have some fall off from the lights on those LEDs coming from the back of the eyes. So you want to either cover those with paper or any other material that you think you may have that's disposable to you. I'm using apoxie sculpt. The reason why I'm using it is I want these LEDs to stay fixed and that I don't end up pulling them out if I make an excessive maneuver or positioning of the head. And of course, I want to make sure I seal the light completely inside the skull. I don't want anything spilling to the outside. Now, once you put this putty in there, they're going to be pretty much permanent. It's going to be pretty difficult to remove these. But in any case, actually, that's what you want. You want them to stay fixed. You don't want to have to make a second repair if for any reason you pull too hard and you move that head too much in a specific pose. Pretty cool. Now, we know we've already capped off that excess light. It's not going to show up on the chest or the shoulders. So let me show you what's actually inside this unit. And you can get these pieces off of Amazon. They come from Max. This is the flicker board. It's got 3 outlets for 3 lights and 1 power outlet, which is at the bottom. It says in, the others say out. Very, very tiny, as you can see from the prongs that I'm holding it with. That's going to be inside the torso. Now, connected to this is the LEDs. I'm using the one in the center. The one at the very bottom is the micro LED, and those come in flashing concept as well too, but I don't have that board. I have to use what I've got. The board that I used earlier is the one on the bottom right, and that is a continuous light. I didn't like it for this purpose. I always hook up my stuff USB as you see at the top because I don't have to deal with batteries later on. Those teeny tiny button cells are just a nuisance, and I don't want to buy 100 of them, and I don't have to open up the figure to do so. So in any case, getting back to the neck, you're going to take the peg out, drill straight down through the neck, and cut a small notch in the back for the wires to enter. Once you've done that, then you can reattach the peg and the head together. Drilling out that hole is going to be with a Dremel. It's probably going to take you around 15 to 20 minutes because it will bind, it will get stuck. You'll have to restart your Dremel several times. So go very, very slow on the drilling. Make a test before you go on, and then connect your pieces back together. Now the wires are going to come right through the center in the center of the torso. Connect your board, whether it's the continuous light or the flickering board like this one, and you can glue it down on the side, or you can actually just leave it loose because there is plenty of room in there and it's not going to damage it. In this case, I ended up gluing it to the inside. Heat up your plastic, pop the torso back in, and you're set. You're ready to go. Now, the paint scheme on this is totally different than what came from factory. That's a whole different video. This is just about the lighting because they had so many questions about it. You will have a wire in the back. If that's unsightly to you, then this is not the method for you. You can go with a wireless, but then you are going to be dealing with batteries. In this case, I just pop it onto a USB bank here, and then that's it. It's ready to go, and there's no batteries to take out. There's no batteries that are going to leak. No damage to it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do like it, please comment, subscribe, share it, and of course, don't forget to keep customizing. I'll leave you with the end video.